Well, I've lived in Blackpool for over 20 years. I've seen it change over the years. It's a very low-income town. It's one of the lowest income towns in the UK. There's a high level of benefit claimants. We've seen people's income dropping over the last few years from the low base that it was already at, and at the same time, prices are not dropping.
My congregation is, although solidly retirement land, I find a lot of people who are struggling themselves, particularly over energy costs. That's a new phenomenon for us, I think. And I think people tend to see themselves in a different light than they did before, because it's the first time perhaps in their lives that they have really worried about whether they will be able to pay their way. And that does tend to produce a bit of resentment to those they see benefiting from what they have paid in the past.
I think some of the people involved in the credit union have been a little bit surprised. We launched in 2009 and we certainly anticipated that the people with financial problems would be those on benefits or low incomes, the financially excluded. And what we've actually found is that that's not the case at all. It isn't restricted to that income group at all. It's people who are in employment are often in even worse situations than those on benefits, because they have grown up, I think, over the last 20 years or so, where the expectation of easy credit has been there, and people haven't built savings because if anything ever went wrong, they could always get a credit card or a loan.
Some of the cuts to benefits for disabled people are pretty challenging. People who have been through the assessment recently are talking about how harsh it is. And as that's rolled out, there are an awful lot of people who are very anxious about that, wondering if they're going to have to give their car back or whether they won't be able to pay their carer anymore. For the first time recently, I heard of a regular family in my congregation who are worried whether they'll be able to keep their house because they're living in a rented accommodation where they've lived for over 10 years, but it's got some rooms in the attic. And they're wondering whether that will count as spare bedrooms and whether they'll lose benefits or feel they've got to move from a place where they've become established.
Of the customers that we have that we've talked to about what they intend to do, only one has actually said to us, well, I'll have to go and get a job. And the reality is, if the jobs aren't there, you're not going to go and get them. I think people need to be aware that there are alternatives, and they need to be aware that they are going to have to manage their budgets much better. It may be that as a result of these changes, some people are forced into doing that sometimes for the first time. I mean, Blackpool's a tough little town, despite the sort of general decline that you see in seaside towns over the years. Blackpool's always come out fighting. It's always picked itself up and tried something new and tried to redevelop itself, and I like that, and I think that's something that's in the people as well, that they always keep on battling. You just wonder how long people can battle and when they run out of steam.
My greatest fear for our country is that we become more and more polarised, that we have an elite, very wealthy section of people, and at the far end of the scale, an enormous number of people who are, as it were, scrabbling about in the ground trying to earn a living. I think even caricatures, like the reporting around Ian Duncan Smith saying I could live on £53 or whatever it is a week if I had to, even though it is a caricature, shows that there is so little understanding of how people who really do have to live on benefits have to survive. We're all in it together is a grand aim, but I don't see much of a movement towards it, I'm afraid.